Very nice to see you all connected online. We just need to start, but we will be allowing other colleagues to join in because we have many expression of interest to join in, so we'll let them join as soon as they can. So far we have nearly 60 participants online, so this is very good. So many thanks for this. We have people from all over the world, even if this is a training targeting the European politicians, but we welcome everyone because we think that you can all benefit very much from this session. So I'll just give some practical details and then I will give the floor to our colleagues. First thing, this session and tomorrow's session is being recorded and the recording will be shared with all the participants. The second thing is that we will be taking a group picture at 4 o'clock after the session of questions and answers, after the keynote speaker. Then we will also be sharing all the material and all the presentations in the links that you have in the agenda. Everything can be found there. And the last point is that there is an evaluation form also in the agenda where I would ask all the participants fill it after the training. If you participate only one day, then you fill it in for one day. If you participate on both days, you fill it in tomorrow. Okay. So without any further ado, I will give the floor to Fabrizio Rossi, the Secretary General of CEMR, the Council of European Municipalities and Regions. And welcome everyone. You have the floor, Fabrizio.
Thank you very much, dear Eva, and welcome everyone. It's really exciting to see so many people online from so many different places. We are truly glad to see you with us today. Thank you very much for joining this Climate Academy. Let me provide very briefly really why we are here today, and also let me spend a few words really to acknowledge the partners that have been working together with us on the preparation of this training academy. If we are able really to be together today is really because of the work that we've been putting together, all of us, the CMR, of course, PLATFORMA, but also our friends from UCLG, the Global Organization of Cities and Local Governments. Emilia Seitz, the Secretary General, will speak just after me. But also let me acknowledge really the good collaboration that we have with the United Nations Disaster and Risk Reduction Unit. This has been a collaboration that has been going on for quite some years now. And we really see that this is really bringing a real impact with so many people getting more and more interested in the work we are doing. Why do we need a training academy on climate? Let me share my experience here, because I've been Secretary General of CMR since 2 years, but before joining CMR, I was working for the main climate innovation initiative of the European Union. And back, if I think of the thinking we have within the organization 4 or 5 years ago, we were really assuming that when we were thinking of the green transition, when we were thinking of decarbonizing the economy, decarbonizing territories and societies, we were really thinking that the real problem was politics. We were assuming that we had innovation, we had finance, we have the know-how, we have the business model. What we miss is politics. Well, that was easy, right? It was an easy thinking. Then what we have been realizing over the last years is that politics is not the missing part, but I think it's just the most complex and difficult part. Because at the end, what really what makes this green transition very special and challenging and complex is this really democratic element that we see really within the transition. The green transition and decarbonizing societies is first of all an exercise of democracy, and this is the very challenging part. Just think, for instance, at the attempt that we have seen implemented in many different countries over the years. I think it was 2018 in France when the French government tried really to put a tax, a carbon tax on citizens, And this really created the Yellow Vest movement with protests and road blockades all over the country. More recently, just think of the example of Germany, with the national government that try really to implement a specific ban on a gas boiler, trying really to push for a citizen to buy heat pumps. Well, this was something that put the government in real jeopardy and in a real difficult situation. So at the end, the difficult part of this is really the democratic exercise. And to run this democratic exercise on the ground, we need, of course, to have a strong leader that knows, of course, about climate resilience, that knows about climate solutions, but also leaders that are able really to connect with the ecosystem and to bring together different stakeholders on the journey towards the decarbonization of our economies. We think that this is really what is lacking today. We think that there is really some room for improvement when it comes really to creating alliances with different stakeholders. This is why today, the way we are approaching this training, the way we are structuring this training for local elected politicians is really assuming that they are a driver within their territories. And then, of course, this is about finance. This is about understanding the business models. This is about understanding the solutions. But this is, first of all, about being able really to connect with diverse stakeholders and to discuss and exchange on possible solutions. So today, us being here today from so many different countries is, I think, a first attempt really to have this important conversation, to understand who is doing what are the challenges that we are facing, and try really more and more to shape solutions together. This is my humble perspective. This is why I'm truly excited really with the work we are doing under the Training Academy. And I'm really looking forward to more and more training academies in the future. I think this is really a work that we can increase in the future together with our partners. If you agree, Eva, I would probably stop here, and I wish you, all of you, 2 very fruitful days. And do not hesitate to reach out to us also should you have specific feedback. We are always very interested in hearing from you, and enjoy this training and enjoy the next 2 days. Thank you very much.
Okay, many thanks, Fabrizio, and very relevant points. So thank you very much. And now, Emilia, you have the floor to also enlighten us with your introduction of remarks.
Thank you very much, Eva, and thank you, Fabrizio, for that very insightful introduction to this 3rd edition of the Climate Academy. I was saying to my team, it is a very attractive name, the Climate Academy. I think it sets the right tone on what we want to do, and I certainly very much identify with the introductory remarks that you have given. The first thing that I wanted us to realize as a group, and I really love all these different countries coming up in the scroll, in the chat, all the greetings from Greece to Argentina to Romania to Morocco, all of this diversity. Malaysia is also there, is that at the outset, this academy was meant to be a European approach academy, right? And looking at European things. And that's what explained also very much the partnership with PLATFORMA, which is this consultation mechanism that we have at European level. But undoubtedly, our very tight network of networks with UCLG and CEMR there have contributed to a larger vision, and I am delighted to see representatives and colleagues from other UCLG sections joining us today with this diversity of practitioners that are going to help us reflect on key issues and key key action around climate. So I want to celebrate that diversity, and I want to celebrate this joint approach, because indeed tackling climate cannot be boxed within one region, and it cannot be boxed within one type of action. It is actually connected with everything. And the local level, the territorial level knows very well, in particular its leadership, that you cannot tackle climate, mitigate or adapt to climate emergencies if you are not tackling the rest. It is a well-known fact that we are exceeding planetary boundaries. This is clear to all of us because of how nature is reacting. And still, the pretext that we have used to exceed planetary boundaries, which is living better, right? Quality of life, is actually proven wrong, because billions of people, billions, still do not have access to even the most basic services. There is something in this model that is not working. Nothing can justify what we are doing. Nothing can justify the relation that we have right now with the planet. Nothing can justify it, because it is a proven fact that inequalities are growing, that we are unable to deliver basic services, that the kind of investment that we are doing in development is not enough. And so from that perspective, if we accept that, because in fact, it is documented what is not working, we need to actually transform our collective relationship with the planet, with nature, but also among ourselves, right? There is a level of collaboration that we need to promote. And I fully agree with you that it's not as simple as there is no political will. It's more complex than that. We need to ensure, and I think the territorial level that is gathered here today, that we represent, local and regional governments are well suited to ensure that communities embrace action. It is work that we need to do, so that people understand the transformation that we will need to make as not a sacrifice only, as not a change of model only, but a renewed understanding of what good life means, quality of life means, and what development entails. And if we make that connection and we transform the type of services that are provided, benefiting universally those communities that local and regional governments serve, if we do that, we will be able to also tackle the very tough discussion that is still pending between the global north and the global south, the east and the west. The discussions around loss and damages, the discussion around climate justice. It is not a futile discussion or something that you can do separately from the local action that you need to promote. You cannot re-engineer urban planning to support more sustainable and just practices with citizens if you don't tackle these issues as well. That is the democratic process that I feel we need to tackle. And this is why this academy is particular, because this climate academy is not only about technical solutions, which we will see as well. We will see the technical solutions that are being brought up by decentralized cooperation projects, very concrete issues that are being done. But we will also look at the possibility to shift our minds and to look at the climate challenge as a climate opportunity as well, to rethink how we live, how we organize. And we will be dedicating sessions to that. The transition to renewable energy, the urban mobility systems that need to be a pressing priority, not only if we look at carbon emissions, but also if we look at promoting equality. the essential services that would need to be reshuffled around proximity. And proximity does not mean an elite that lives 15 minutes away from the center of towns. No, it means territories that are organized in a way that every basic service is walkable and is accessible between those reasonable 15 to 30 minutes. It is a proximity that allows the moms and the dads and the children to enjoy the public space in a different way. But it's also about empowering communities to play a certain role in rethinking how they want to protect biodiversity. How do we tackle the use and the management of water as a common and not simply as a good that you pay for? So you pay more, you get more water. That cannot be the logic anymore in an era of scarcity. This kind of framing where equality and justice and the transformation of how we live together is at the heart of the climate discussion, without forgetting those more vulnerable in this process, which are usually women, again, but also those that are displaced and people that are subject to migration. That is what makes the difference between our climate academy and many other courses and initiatives that are looking at the Green Deal. The Green Deal, the connections with COP, are important, but will only work if we connect them with other agendas. So the European agendas need to be connected with sustainable development goals agendas, and they need to be connected as well with the financing for development agenda. We will need to change the architecture of the financial architecture, not only to have a different type of access for local and regional governments, but also to finance different things. And many of the different things that we will want to finance, I think, will be coming up here in this discussion. I will stop here by saying that this year, the Summit of the Future is going to take place. And in that Summit of the Future, at this very difficult context internationally, is going to define the next steps in our vision for a common agenda and for development. From my perspective, the Summit for the Future will not go far if we don't link it with the social summit, where people need to play a very important role. And the connection between those two are the local and regional governments that we represent. So no pressure for you all, no pressure, but still a lot of hope and responsibility in the discussions that you're going to have. Thank you very much for giving me the privilege and the opportunity to address this academy, and looking forward to making more academies to come. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Emilia. Muchas gracias. That's all I can say, because you really given us, and also Fabrizio, a lot of thoughts and a lot of optimism, really, for the future. So I will just remind the newcomers, we have over 75 people online. We'll be taking a picture at 4 o'clock, so stay there, and I will let you know when we on the cameras on for that. Okay. But now we're going to have a very short icebreaker, which is going to be introduced by my colleague Juan Carlos from UCLG, just to know where we are from and who do we represent. So I will pass the floor on to Juan Carlos, and then we'll start with the keynote speech. So Juan Carlos, please.
Thank you very much, Eva. And I think many of you have been in UCLG events know this tool, Mentimeter. But if you don't, please take your phone or in your browser, go to menti.com. You can also use the link that I just shared in the chat to access directly, and enter the code that you see in the screen, 7826816. And we will be using this for a really quick consultation right now before we go into the keynote speech, and later also to get some more feedback from participants. So again, go to menti.com and use the code 7826816. And let's go to the first one. And it's, what type of constituency are you, or like, no, what category best represents you? like as we were saying, this Climate Academy is targeting elected representatives from Europe, but I know that we have many officers and city staff in the room and probably other stakeholders. So we wanted to have a better idea of who we had in the room.
Okay, Juan Carlos, I'm just going to repeat the code for those who, I mean, it's
Yes.
on the screen, but it's 7826816. I will put it in the chat as well.
Thank you very much, Eva. Yes. But yeah, I think it's a good picture. We have some elected representatives that we thank you for taking the time to participate in this Climate Academy. We know it's always hard to do it in a busy agenda. Many local and regional government staff supporting them, but we also have the academia think tanks that we will be listening from as well during these 2 days, bringing the science and the also all of the evidence that is being taken, not only on the impacts, but also the solutions that cities can provide. Also really good that we have civil society organization here represented both by NGOs or general public and others, that it would be also nice to get to know who you are throughout these 2 days. Let's go now to the second question. And we heard many things from our opening speeches about, related to climate. So when you think of climate change, what word comes to your mind? And please just put one single word in the spaces that you have. You can put up to 3 words in there. So what word comes to your mind when you think of climate change? Resilience. It's really good. And I think this can go both ways. I think there's also the impact that we're feeling, the negative part of it, but also the opportunities that are there. So I wanted to see a little bit, we wanted to see how the feeling of the room before we go into the first keynote speech. So we see adaptation, heat, crisis, disasters, opportunities as well, solidarity. So many of the words that were brought up in the opening, an opportunity coming more and more. So I think this would be good for our speakers today to keep in mind what we are relating and what we think when we think of climate change. Let's go now to the last one, and it's where you are coming from. We wanted to clarify that this is a European-focused climate academy, and a lot of the things that we will be discussing are about Europe. But we know there's interest from other parts of the world. So just kind of wanted to have a feeling of who was in the room, and I would invite you to continue introducing yourselves as you have been doing it in the chat, telling us which city and countries you are joining us from. Okay, but I think we have more Europeans than I actually thought, so it's really good that we had this question, because I was in the chat, I saw everything from Philippines to Canada and Argentina, but it's really good to see that we have a good representation from Europe here. So with this, Eva, I will close this first part. We will go back to this Mentimeter later, but I will close this first part of the consultation.
Okay, many thanks, Juan Carlos. We will be sharing this resource with you, but it's really interesting to see, very quickly where we come from, but also, what it comes to our minds when we think of climate. So this is going to be also a very good link to introduce the next speaker, who is going to be Sergio Castellari. Sergio Castellari is a senior scientist at the Natural Institute for Geophysics and Volcanology in Bologna, and he's working on adaptation on climate change. And he's currently seconded as an environmental and climate advisor at the Permanent Mission of Italy in the United Nations in New York. And he has been working at the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change in Bologna and seconded national expert at the European Environmental Agency in Copenhagen. And he's been also national focal point for Italy at the IPCC panel. So he's been many things and he's very knowledgeable. So I'm delighted to count on his participation. And just for you to know that Sergio has also been trainer in the past in our Climate Academy. So he can also follow very well as well. So Sergio, please, you have the floor. And then there will be also questions and answer session for addressing politicians mainly. And you can also put the questions in the chat and we will be monitoring the questions then. Thank you very much, and Sergio, you have the floor.
Thank you, Eva, and good afternoon to everybody. Here I'm from New York, so this is the morning. So I have a short presentation which I will give you. So I'm gonna try now to open. Okay. Okay, now. Do you see my slide?
We see a white screen.
Just a
white
white.
screen.
Maybe you might have to choose another window when you share it.
I usually put this one on. Actually, everything's fine from my side. You are sharing screen. I have a green light, and I see here. Yeah.
We can maybe sharing from our end.
So you don't see anything?
No, it's white. So let us try to share it from here. And meanwhile, you can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. It's strange because everything's fine. Let me try again. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna try again. Can you see now?
We see something, but it's not the main slide. It's like you're connecting.
Do you see my title?
No.
No.
No, but maybe my colleagues can share it, and then we'll just move it.
Okay, sure. Okay. Strange because I mean, yeah. Let me.
No worries. Give me 10 seconds, but you can start meanwhile, and we will share it as soon as we have it. Ah, there you go. Okay. No.
Okay, let me see now. Maybe let me just try this last time. So this is the whiteboard. I see a whiteboard here, which is strange. Let me see just a second. No, strange. I don't understand why it's not working. So Microsoft PowerPoint, you should see now.
Okay, now we see.
Yeah, now we saw.
Perfect. Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
this is fine. Sorry, some technical problem.
Okay, now it's good.
Yeah. We have to cross the Atlantic. It's far away.
We're just, you're just in New York. It takes a bit of time. No problem.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Okay. So as Eva introduced you, yes, I used to be a climate scientist. Now I'm working more on the policy side, on the diplomatic side. I'm working at the Italian permanent mission of here at the United Nations. So with the other European Union country, we negotiate on different topics, climate, energy, environment. And so there is a lot of topics on the agenda of the United Nations, sustainable development. Here, I will give you just a brief overview of what basically has been defined as a climate crisis or climate emergency at the global and European level. So as unfortunately, the global carbon emission from the fossil fuel has been rising again also the last year in 2023. And as you can see here, this is coming from the Global Carbon Project, which is a nice project at the global level, which they make an estimation of the carbon budget, how much carbon we emit in the atmosphere and how much carbon can remain in order to keep the famous 1.5 degree objective from the Paris Agreement. So here you can see basically that the total emission in 2023, here we measure in billion of tons of carbon dioxide, gigatons, GT CO2. We basically had the total emissions, so including the fossil fuel emission and the land use change. So when you deforest, when you eliminate the forest, you basically increase the net emission of carbon because you eliminate a sink of carbon in the planet. So the total emission last year were around 40 billion of tons of CO2, which comparing to 1990, which is a kind of landmark year, is the year of the Kyoto Protocol and is the a reference year also of the Paris Agreement. We basically have an increase of a global total emission of fossil fuels and the land use change around 50%, only in, as you can see, only in 33 years. If we go to check which are the sectors more responsible for this emission, we can see that unfortunately still the coal is around 41%. Then we have the oil around 32. The gas, it went down 21, and we have other different productions, so the cement and the flaring. So as you can see from this time series, you can see that the coal has been increasing the last years, especially during also the last 3 years. And also the oil has been increasing, the emission from these two sectors. Instead, the gas, it went down during the last 2 years, and now is stable. If we go to check which are the main country responsible for this, I know you already know that China is for sure the #1 now, and is emitting the most of the fossil fuel emission at the global level. And actually, the emission of China, they've been increasing the last year of 11%. US has been going down. European Union, 27 member state, has been going down. India has been going up of around 8%. And so basically, you can see that this is this is a very, very big international problem where we have basically two countries, US and China, which basically they include more than 50% of the global emission of fossil fuels. This emission, what they turn in concentration. They increase the atmospheric concentration, in this case of the carbon dioxide. And this global CO2 concentration has been measured for a while. There is the oldest measurement station has been in Mauna Loa, Hawaii. And here you can see the trend of increasing concentration measured at the Mauna Loa station in Hawaii. And you can see that from 1750, basically we consider the concentration of atmospheric CO2 before the Industrial Revolution, okay, which is around 270, 280 ppm part per million. So this means 280 molecules of CO2 over 1 million of molecules of air. Now, the last year, the average mean annual value of the CO2 concentration is around 419. So we have an increasing of 51% since about 2 centuries ago. And now I put here the value of last February. So the monthly value is around 424. As you can see, there is no stop in the trend of the concentration. And this is a very big problem because we are perturbating the global carbon cycle. We have been starting to perturbate as a mankind, the human mankind, this carbon cycle since the Industrial Revolution, since the extensive use of coal, then the oil, then the gas. Another concept which came out in the science, in the climate science in the last years, and has been also very well presented in the last 2 reports from the IPCC, from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change of the United Nations, is the concept of cumulative, accumulated emission. So we can measure the emission directly, and we can measure the emission also from a long time ago, and we can try to see how much emission of different countries has been accumulating during the years. And as you can see, the US and the European Union are the most responsible for the global emission in the last 100 years. But China, in the last 20 years, has been accelerating. And in fact, now is the first emitter every year, and now is basically getting very close to European Union. So when we consider the historical responsibility, which is a concept which in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change has been always quoted from the developing country, from about that the developed country have the most responsibility to have increased the concentration because they've been increasing the emission of carbon dioxide. Now all this scenario is changing because, as you can see, China is really coming, and I think if it's going on like this in less than 20 years, it's going to be overcoming, passing the European Union. So I started from the mission produced from our activity, industrial activity, energy, transport, agriculture. I showed the increasing concentration with no stop of the non-stop trend of increasing concentration, atmospheric concentration of the carbon dioxide. So all this, if you put all together, the temperature, the emission, and also the concentration of the CO2, and also the concentration of the second most important greenhouse gases, which is the methane, which has been increased of 150% since the pre-industrial level, and the ocean, which is warming up and is becoming more acidic, so the pH is going down, and also the sea level rise. The sea level of most of the global ocean are increasing. All this we can call a climate crisis. And this is a very not optimistic scenario in front of us, because actually we are already undergoing, we're already living through the impacts of all this climate crisis. So when we talk about global warming, climate change, what is really the difference about the past climate change? That this climate change in the last 100 years, 150 years is extremely fast. There is no comparison with the climate change of the past, which were due to natural forces, solar orbital variation, volcanic eruption, that were change which were periodical, the orbital parameters of the Earth through the sun, and they were basically predictable. Instead, this one is a very, very, very fast, and they were slow in the past. And the second point is that this change is due mainly to the emission of carbon dioxide and the other greenhouse gases and the land use change. And both are due to human activity. The last year, 2023, has been studied very well from different programs, international programs, and from, for example, from Copernicus, which is a European program at the global level, collecting measurement in different sectors, in atmosphere, in the climate, atmospheric, chemical measurement, and has been detected that 2023 as the warmest year in the meteorological record. And as you can see here, you can see the time series, the red one of 2023, comparing only to the time series of the every year from 1940. As you can see, it really stay up over all the other years. And this is a very record year. It's a very, very special year, unfortunately, in a negative sense. So, as I will explain later, there is a concept which is part of the policy, global policy, European policy, which is the 1.5 degree objective. So the target to keep the temperature, the global mean temperature, under 1.5 degrees comparing to the pre-industrial level, compared to the 19th century, more or less, the temperature we had in the 19th century. So this 2023 year had half of the days over 1.5 degree. We had a very large number of extreme events. The carbon emission from wildfire has been increasing a lot by 30% respected to the previous year due to very persistent wildfire in Canada. The sea surface temperature of most of the ocean has been warmer. The Antarctic sea ice has been reached a low, a negative peak, a very small amount, and the Arctic sea ice was one of the 4 top annual peak of lowest extension of the Arctic sea ice. So this is a very, very strong signal that there is an increase in an acceleration of climate change. And the 2023 is really a record year, which should warn all of us that we are really undergoing a very, very fast going on impacts of climate change. Another point I like to highlight, which is very important to keep in mind, as like a bell, a ringing bell for all of us, are the concept of tipping points, which have been introduced in climate science already almost 20 years ago, but now has been very much studied. So tipping points are instability point, bifurcation point in the climate system. Climate system include the atmosphere, the ocean, the cryosphere, the biosphere. It's a very complex and non-linear system. And the tipping points are parts of this climate system which they have a threshold beyond which the impacts can be irreversible, dangerous, very fast. 5, there've been identified 16 tipping points lately in the different science program, and at least 5 of them that are very close to a possible threshold. The Greenland ice sheet, which if they're melting more, they can increase up to 5-10 meters at the global level, the sea level rise. The West Antarctic ice sheet of the West Antarctic Peninsula on the west side of the Antarctica, which is more prone to melt. The permafrost, the collapse of the convention of the Labrador Sea, where you have the starting of the conveyor belt, the global conveyor belt as a vertical circulation due to density in all the ocean, which start from the Labrador Sea and it goes down in the Atlantic and it passes to all the other ocean. And also the coral reefs, which are very, very sensitive to the sea surface temperature of the ocean. The last report of the IPCC basically is pointing out that if we pass the risk of turning on these climate tipping points can become very high, around 2 degrees. But we are we can also have this risk also if we are very close to 1.5, as we are approaching now with the global mean temperature. In fact, the other concept highlighted from the IPCC is that even global warming of 1 degree, a threshold which we already passed, because at the global level, we're already over 1 degree, we are around 1.2, already we are under risk of some of these tipping points. These they have to be very much considered because these are non-linear points of the climate system. We know enough, but we don't know everything. And we don't know really how much worse can be the situation if we pass this threshold. So Europe is not doing fine. And actually, if we compare the trend of the global mean land temperature with the European Union land temperature, we can see that at the global level, we have a warming trend around 1.2 degrees centigrade. Instead, Europe has been warming almost twice, to double, around 2 degrees. And the projection of temperature, they show that this is on the right side, the right panel show the worst scenario with the fossil fuels keeping on going, the emissions still going, rising up. And this shows a very increasing of temperature that which can reach up to an average of 6 degrees by the end of the century. All this climate change is already provoking a large number of extreme events at the meteorological, climate, or hydrological level. I'm talking about floods, storms, heat waves, forest fires, and droughts. And this has come from the European Environment Agency study, where they collect the data set of the direct economic loss from the extreme events. And from 1980 to 2022, this is the record of years that have been studied. At the European level, we lost around 650 billion of euro in this time, in this last 42 years. And on average, in the last 2022, we lost around 52 billion of euro in direct economic loss from extreme events. And one other point which has been highlighted at the European Environment Agency is the fact that only 20-25% of the asset which got impacts from the extreme event has been insured. So this is, we have a strong climate protection gap to fulfill. So increasing the use of the scheme, insurance scheme for climate, meteor, and hydrological event can be beneficial. And reducing this gap can really help the resilience also, and can help the people also to think about how to build in a more resilient way, can trigger basically a positive reaction from the user, from the inhabitants in the city. Just yesterday, there was the launch at the European Environment Agency of the first climate risk assessment report, which is a broad overview of all different climate risk at the European level and built through indicators. And this is the message, the key message, that Europe is not prepared for rapidly growing climate risk. So this study showed that Europe is the fastest warming continent in the world, and the climate risks are threatening the energy and the food security, and especially the ecosystem, the infrastructure, the water resource, and the financial stability and the people's health. So this is a very interesting report. I invite you to read the executive summary, which is already available and already edited. Instead, the full report is still unedited. And it really gives you a very broad overview of what we are still missing at the policy level to try to increase the resilience of the European Union. And one of the key messages of this report is the fact that the European Union, the member state, the regional level, the local level, they need to work more effectively in a transversal way in order to address this climate risk. So it cannot be addressed only at the national level, it cannot be addressed only at the local level, but there is a need to be more transversal, to be strongly in fighting the climate change impacts. So the global policy, as I mentioned before, we have the Paris Agreement agreed in 2015, which was a landmark, a very strong agreement for the first time, including all the countries, developed and developing countries, try to reduce their emissions. So they have climate pledge, and also in this pledge, there is also the adaptation. In the in the Paris Agreement, there is also one article dealing with the global goal of adaptation. And this is the main objective of this agreement is to keep the world mean average, the global mean temperature rise below 2 degrees, but making every effort to keep below 1.5. And this comes from the science, from the data I showed you in the previous slides. So these are the possible future, which IPCC in the last report present very well. If we want to try to keep the the global mean temperature at 1.5, you can see the left panel. We're going to have a warming of the Arctic because there is a sea ice albedo. So the Arctic usually is warming faster and is already warming faster than the rest of the planet. But instead, if we don't reduce, we don't basically arrive to zero emission by the end of this century at the global level, maybe we go toward the scenario on the right side by the end of the century, around 3-4 degrees more than the pre-industrial level. And as you can see that the Antarctic and especially the Arctic, they are very, very warm with temperature around 7 degrees. So this implies that the sea ice has been already all melted in the Arctic, and the sea level rise also has been a very big concern. This is another concept. I talk about the cumulative emissions, so all the emissions made from the different countries. And in order to keep this target of 1.5 degrees, there has been made an estimation on how much gigatons of CO2 that we can, at the global level, we can still emit in the atmosphere in order to keep 1.5. And as you can see, if we consider the left panel, if we want to keep the objective, the strong objective target of the Paris Agreement, we need to do very, very fast. We have a very small windows of maneuver, and we have to reach the 1.5 degree in 7 years from now, so more or less in 2030, 2032. Instead, if we want to keep the more prudent, the more large objective of 2 degrees from the Paris Agreement, we still have around 30 years. So basically, the concept from this carbon budget means the next 2 decades are key for the human mankind in order to try to make a turnover on the climate change. So what we can do? We know that first of all, we have to understand that this is a real problem for the mankind and stop denying and postponing. We need to study more, and we need to invest more in science, and we need to adapt to climate change, because some already some climate impacts are going on, and some of them are unavoidable. So we need to reduce the damage and to make prevention. So adaptation is key. And at the same time, we need to eliminate the cause of climate change. So we need to stop the emission of greenhouse gases and the deforestation at the global level. So climate change adaptation are the two faces of the same medal. We have to progress with both of them in a parallel way. So the climate policy, they have many co-benefits. They can really have co-benefits in security, in energy supply, developing new jobs. So we have to think about the investment in climate policy, not just the cost. One concept which has been growing up at the global level and at the European level is the concept of the nature-based solution, which are a green solution using the nature in order to address adaptation and also mitigation. An example is can be the green roof or the floodplain, which you can build in the urban area, or you can build outside of the city in order to control the potential flood of the river. All these solutions, which are green, are really multifunctional. They have multiple benefits, so environmental, social, and economic, and they are very positive solutions. So they really address both points, mitigation and adaptation. They are increasing at the European level and also at the global level. Last year, the United Nations Environment Assembly, they adopted a resolution in Nairobi with the first time United Nations definition of what are the nature-based solutions. So now we have a UN definition of this solution, and these are one of the key part of the recent adaptation, European climate change adaptation, which was launched in 2021 from the European Union. I want to finish, I'm basically closing my presentation with another issue about the climate service, which has been increasing a lot lately. Climate service means to produce scientific products on climate change for different users. Can be agriculture, can be health, can be energy. And so we require a lot of scientific work in order to produce not only indicator, but something more, which is more suitable for the real application for as I said, for health, for an hospital, for an agricultural sector, for a farmers, for an urban area. Copernicus is the new program which started years ago at the European level, and there are 6 different centers, and the Copernicus Climate Change Service is now the main provider, and one of the main providers also at the global level of indicators, maps, and I invite the policymaker at the local level to register in the climate change service, and that they can really access to very, very interesting data and update it every month. So this is the end of my very fast introduction of the climate change crisis. So as I try to show in my slide, the message of science is clear. The time is running out. It's up to us at the policy level what we want to do for our new generation, for the next generation. This could be our best century, or can be the worst. It's really important to do what we do in the next 2 decades will really change what is going to happen at the end of the century. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Grazie mille, Sergio. Very, very, very interesting. So we need to re-listen to what you just said to really understand the full picture, and all the slides are already on the website, on the link I created for this. So you please download it there. And I have been monitoring the chat with my colleagues, so I will just group all the questions and then you can give a general answer, Sergio, also for time constraints. So we have been monitoring the comments or questions, and we've got comments from Algeria, from a PhD student, from Malaysia, climate expert, from Toronto, from the Prime Minister Officer, from Greece as well. And the questions are around about the calculations of the percentages that you have shown. If you can give us maybe some sources where you show...
Which calculation? Because I show many different numbers.
Yeah. What I'm trying to find is the calculations where you had the countries where they, you know, where you have maybe, I think it was a slide number 5, you know, where you had China, we have USA, where you have India, etc., about the CO2 emissions.
Yeah. Okay. So for the CO2 emission, yeah.
Yes, and then I will take all of those. Then we also have about the cross-border. So what happens with the developing countries? Because they produce in developing countries and then they export. So what about those? That was from Malaysia. Then from Toronto, it was basically recognizing what Emilia also mentioned earlier, the added value of these discussions worldwide, also linking it to global agendas, specifically to SDGs that was mentioned. And then question from Greece is about the implementation, whether we need more measures, if this is the solution to combat global warming, or if we should have more concrete projects. And then the last question we just had, and it's about the nature-based solutions that have been adapted by international organizations and how successful that has been in mitigating climate change. So if you can maybe give a one-block answer.
Okay, I will try. Okay, so the estimation of the mission is made through. There are some calculations, some formula, and there is also a panel of the IPCC, of the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, which prepare the inventory of the mission. And another point is that every member state of the NFCCC, of the United Nations Framework Convention, especially the developed country, is mandatory for them to produce a national communication where they basically describe all their emission and all the data about their emission at the national level. So there is already a system installed which can describe all this emission. And for the past, use this based on the industrial production. You make basic calculations through that. And now about the natural-based solution. The natural-based solution, I've been working on that when I was working for the European Environment Agency years ago. And the natural-based solution has been coming out already more than 15 years ago. They were called in a different way. They were called green adaptation. They were called ecosystem-based approach to adaptation. What really is important in European level, especially in North Europe, has been started to be used more than South Europe. And I've been seeing a lot of them already implemented in many different cities, in Netherlands, in Denmark, in Sweden, in UK. And they're very efficient because sometimes they can even cost more than other solutions, but in the long term has been proved now after years that they are more manageable. They require less work to be kept installed compared to a gray adaptation solution. For example, a sea level barrier, which you have to build with concrete. And you build based on a scenario, on a simulation. You basically think about that the sea level rise in that area will increase in 100 years, I don't know, or 1 meter. You build a barrier. And if if a flood arrives, which goes over 1 meter, your solution is not going to be good anymore. So you need to make incremental adaptation. You need to change this gray solution. With a natural-based solution, the concept is completely different. You use, for example, a space which is outside of the city, and you know that in the past this river going to the city has been flooding in the city, so you create a big space which is called a room for the river, space for the river. So you leave the river to flood in that area, and when there is no flood, this area can be a recreational park. And in the same time, since you are using nature, you make afforestation or reforestation, you increase the sink of carbon. So you have basically an effect also mitigation. So it's been proven, there are studies, also the European Environment Agency and also from different European Union projects in the last year, that are more efficient, more manageable. And so even sometimes in some conditions, they can be more expensive. There are no regrets. These are the best solution to work, maybe with a mixture of gray, but this is the way to do for increasing the resilience and to mitigate climate change. So to reduce the emission. And another question was, sorry, I missed another one.
It was
about the developing country. Yeah, sure. Here at the UN in New York, we have a high-level political forum on sustainable development every July. And actually this year is also one of the SDG which will be addressed at the high-level debate will be SDG 13, fight the climate change. So we are really into the problem. And the SDG, as you know, the Agenda 2030, we are going slowly on that. The Secretary General Guterres sent a big warning last year and also still sending warning that we are really slow on addressing all the SDG. And because also, as you know, we are in a very complicated geopolitical situation. So it's not easy to address all this packet of 17 SDG. But this is the way to work. And we still have 7 years before to go to 2030. And at the same time, the SDG 13 has this target of 2050 to arrive to carbon neutral in 2050, because all the models, all the studies at the scientific level, they show that if we don't reduce dramatically in the next decade the emission of greenhouse gases at the global level, we are going to go over for sure 1.5, 2 degrees. And so we have to expect to have a very strong impact, which are already coming now in the next decades. And so this will imply an increase in financing for resilience, for adaptation, which maybe in some countries which are not strongly economically and financially, which this imply to change and move, shift the financing from education, from health, welfare, to resilience. And this will create a lot of problems at a socioeconomic level. So we need to understand this concept. It's very, very important. And this is also not affecting only the developing country, but as has been very clearly shown yesterday from the European Union climate risk assessment, is affecting already Europe. Europe is becoming a lab, an advanced lab of strong impacts. Is becoming South Europe is a hotspot of climate change. But in the same time, we have the technology, we have the science to address this problem. So we can be really a good practice example for the rest of the planet, how to perform effectively to try to increase the resilience of our country, our region, but also our local area. I cannot hear you.
Sorry, thank you very much, Sergio. Yeah, we have one more question, and then we'll take the picture. Thanks for all the feedback you've done collectively. We have one more additional question from Africa, I believe, and is that in terms of reducing emissions, and the question is carbon taxes and the EU carbon adjustment mechanism. How do you believe that they can effectively contribute to climate change mitigation?
Yeah, I think carbon tax is one of the options which we have on board, and I think yes. Short answer to a short question, yes. I think this is my personal opinion. I think it can play a role.
Okay, thank you very much. So I don't know if there are additional questions to address to Sergio at this point in time. You can always send them to me, and then we can always try to find an answer for you. Okay. So if no more feedback on your side, many thanks, Sergio, for really giving us the latest information, also for sounding positive within this challenge, and also for connecting all the global agendas. And I think that is very interesting to have
I usually say, Eva, sorry if I interrupt, I'm trying to be an optimistic, pessimistic scientist. Yeah, because I mean, we cannot laugh too much. I mean, the problem is serious, okay? So we have to not to take in an easy way. It's serious, but we have everything, all the solutions we have in the pocket. We just need to take out and to implement. That's the problem. But the pocket is very difficult to reach sometimes.
Yeah, but I think that now, as Emilia and Fabrizio mentioned earlier, we have upcoming summits. You know, not only HLPF this July, where SDG 13 will be assessed and reviewed. Also, the Summit of the Future is a milestone for us as well, globally. So that's why joining forces in Europe, but also outside Europe, is fundamental. So we have no excuse. We have all the elements there. We just need to get them all together. So now I think that there are more comments here, but there is just to thank you, Sergio, for your presentation. And now I want to
thank to everybody. I'm reading the message in the chat. Very nice. Thanks. Thanks a lot to all of you. And please keep on going with these events training. Thank you.
We just have, Sergio, wait. We just have one more additional question from Fabrizio, I believe, and then the picture, and then you may go.
Okay, please.
So Fabrizio, please.
Well, thank you very much, dear Eva, for such an honor. Sergio, thank you very much for this very insightful keynote. I think one of the questions that I've spotted in the chat was quite interesting to me. The way I was reading the question was about how to avoid delocalizing our carbon footprint from the Western countries. Somehow we have some specific net zero targets. How to avoid really that the logic is really the localizing the carbon footprint, how to avoid zero-sum games between developed countries and developing countries. I found that input's quite interesting, but I would like to hear from you, and thank you very much, dear Sergio.
This is a very political question. It can only be resolved at the political level, not at the scientific level. So, I mean, European Union has been working on this issue. I think is one of the few areas of the planet which ask this question, and they try to put some boundaries, but the problem that not the rest of the planet is going this way. So it's a big issue, but it can be solved only with a political, strong, effective decision. This is the only way. And I think also the other point is that and this is happening actually, the business community at the European Union level, at least, I'm talking about what I know, they are becoming more sensible and sensitive to the issue of climate change. They understand that if they don't make resilient their sector, they're going to lose money. And this is the best driving force. I'm talking about farmers, I'm talking about tourist sector. They understand that. So they're very sensitive. If this has happened also through the capacity building, the international cooperation is happening also in Africa, in Asia, in the other parts, South America, this will increase the sensitivity. I mean, the issue here is you cannot do any business, not even making wine or having olive oil in your small property without thinking about how it's going to be the climate in 10 years from now, because something will happen. So you need to understand, to be informed, and to be resilient. So climate change is going to be basically part of any our socioeconomic action. That's it. This is given. There is no way out.
Okay, thanks a million, Sergio.
Thanks to everybody.
And now we're just gonna take one picture, so we remember this moment. So could you please turn your cameras on, and my communications colleagues will be dealing with that. I will count out to 3, so you have time to smile as well. Okay. Sergio, are you still around?
Sure. I will follow the next. I will follow the next presentation. Thanks.
Okay,
and after I will go out.
Yeah, but turn your camera on, please. So we.
Sure. Sorry. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Here I am.
Okay. So are we all? So okay. So let's take in the picture. So smile after 1, 2, 3. You smile. 1, 2, 3. Smile. One more try. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay, we're gonna take the second page because there are more people in the second page. So 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay. Okay. So I think that we all look very smiley. So many thanks for your biggest smiles and also for being present here. Now we're gonna have a Mentimeter moment that is also gonna be led by our colleague Juan Carlos, and then we'll have a short break before continuing the second part. Okay, so stay here because Juan Carlos, please tell us, the questions we're gonna ask, and then we'll have a break like in 15 minutes approximately, so you know.
Yeah, thank you very much, Evan. Thank you very much, Sergio, for that introduction. And I think, actually, one of the questions that you put out there in your last comments is going to come up in this Mentimeter exercise. So let's see what people are thinking about it. I'm showing again the instructions for those of you who arrived late. Please go to menti.com and use this code that you see on the screen, 7826816, in order to access the consultation. And basically, as you might have seen in the agenda today, we were trying to look into the impacts of climate change. So it was a really good introduction of the effects of it and what is being seen globally and within Europe. But we wanted to go to the local level and talk and hear from you from participants of what is happening in your territories. So let's start with the first question, and you will see also that at the top you always have the code 7826816 if you haven't joined yet. So the first question, what was the main hazard, one hazard that your city was exposed to in the last 5 years, like the biggest one, the one that has caused the most impact? So we have flooding coming up, heat waves as well, some of the things that were mentioned in the presentation. Earthquake, I didn't clarify, we didn't clarify there that it was climate related, but there's other hazards there as well that are not necessarily completely linked to climate change, but are also part of what cities have to be thinking about it. But we have many here that are related to climate change, even when the question wasn't specific about it. Drought, flooding, a lot of water related issues, wildfire, I see, rising temperatures, also landslide related to water. Yeah, we always see a lot of water related issues when we talk whether about resilience or climate change, forest degradation, mass movement, the impacts that will have in migration also coming up here, strong winds, sea level rising. So yes, many of the things that were mentioned in the presentation. And now we're gonna go to the next question, which was the one that Sergio put in the last comment, and it's, what do you think that will be the biggest impact in 10 years? So what hazards do you expect to impact your city the most 10 years from now? Not today, not next year, but looking at what he was sharing with us in 10 years, what will be the most critical thing for you to think about? Very interesting here. So water shortage already something that is being perceived seen in some regions today, but increasingly it's going to become a bigger issue. And here I will also ask if you want to comment a little bit further on the experience from your city, particularly those representatives that are joining us from Europe. Please do raise your hand, and Eva and other colleagues, if you let me know, we can hear a little bit more about it. But let me, in the meantime, continue looking at the responses. So we have heat waves mixed with floods. So this combination of multiple hazards is something that will definitely start coming up. Global migration flows, flood, sea level rise. Let me go down. Desertification. Pandemics could also be something that we can increasingly see. Drought and flash floods. So I don't know if there's anyone who wants to share a little bit more of insights of where do these hazards that you expect is coming from. Is it something that you have been looking at in your city, or from like what you have been seeing happening around the world? We have water extremes again, people moving out, economy, food risk. Very interesting things. Salinization, forest fires. There's a lot of responses. I'm glad. Some technological hazards as well. Animals migration. Also, I think like connected to the issue of pandemics as well, and diseases is something that could become up. Okay. I don't know if anyone wants to comment or if there's anything in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to share a little bit more of the impacts that you have seen in your city, or that you are trying to address with your city plans. If not, we can continue to the next discussion, to the next question. Okay. So yeah, very big issues coming in front of us already today, and even more when we think in a 10-year scales. But looking positively and looking at how to implement different solutions, whether it's mitigation or adaptation, what stakeholders do local governments work with. So in this question, we ask you to please choose the 3 most important actors for climate strategies of cities. You have the different options there, and you can choose up to 3 of them. So we have activists, businesses, private sector, the city council, civil society organizations, consultants, general public, national governments, scientific community, or supranational organizations such as the EU, the United Nations, and others in other regions of the world. So let's see, like a lot of responses on the city council having the mandate. Of course, it's important. Working with national governments to have the appropriate resources and laws to implement that. Something that like sometimes it doesn't come out, but like working with business and private sector, which are many times, particularly on the mitigation aspect, I think it becomes very important to reduce those emissions, but also when you talk about adaptation and resilience in terms of private development and land use, something that becomes very important. But as it was also highlighted, having the understanding of the general public and civil society is also important, and for that, civil society organizations and the scientific community are very important to understand that, as well as activists. I don't know if there's anyone who has other stakeholders that we haven't listed here. If you want to put them in the chat, would also be interesting to see that. Or Eva, what do you think about these results? Is there anything that we're missing or that we're surprised about?
I don't think there is anything missing. It's quite complete response, and it's not surprising that city council and national governments come, high in the responses.
Very good. Yeah.
Although
And
we also see business and private sector as second high, followed by the scientific community, because I think that there's still a bit of reluctance towards the scientific world, because sometimes we don't want to hear exactly what they have to tell us, even if we are aware of that. But sometimes it's too direct, and then we prefer to avoid it. So I think it is quite important that we see these results. Yeah.
Thank you very much. One that I realized that I didn't put up here when putting out the options, but you can put as many as you want. It was media, and I think like that's something that we have discussed in some other sessions in UCLG. The importance of media in kind of also reflecting those solutions and how they are perceived by citizens. So very important.
Yeah.
So,
we have one question in the chat from Pakistan, and it's like, how can countries like Pakistan, which are not on the climate change hot list and have witnessed events like the 2020 floods, utilize carbon credits as part of the response to climate change? And a bit more about climate credit.
I don't know if we want to put this to Sergio, maybe.
But maybe this is more to Sergio. I don't know if Sergio, you're still online, because I think he had another commitment. But I don't know, Sergio, you're still online?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I can repeat a question that we just got. It's from Pakistan, and is that how can countries like Pakistan, which are on the climate change hot list and have witnessed 220,000 floods, how they can utilize carbon credits as part of the response to climate change?
They can use what? They can utilize what?
Sorry. The carbon credits as part of the response to climate change.
Yes, they had a terrible floods, so they need to work on making resilient more their city. So they have to really invest in there, and that you need to have a very smart policymaker at the local level, working also with the region, because you cannot play one city. You have to try to connect the city with the similar vulnerability together, so they can share the experience and they work together. This is basically, you are in a network of cities, so you basically, European Union and also other area, they've been already developing this network, and this is the way to address problems. So they have to work from the city level with the regional and the national level, and they have to invest to create defense for the floods. So there are many different ways to do. As I said before, the natural-based solution is one of the solutions, which they've been doing already in many different cities. So this is the way to do. I mean, but I mean, it's not easy unless there is a trigger from the policy level. The policymakers at the local level, they have to start this. If they don't start to have an idea about the vulnerability, the sector of their city, which are more vulnerable or not, they need to make a climate risk assessment at the beginning. If you don't have at least a basic climate risk study, you cannot start to perform a planning of resilience. Otherwise, you waste money for nothing.
Okay, thank you very much. And there's also one comment in the chat that also the need to engage with the vulnerable communities. So you just referred to that as well. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Melody. And yeah, I think with this, like we will be actually taking some of your answers of today, especially regarding the hazards from 10 years from now, to kind of organize a little bit more the group work that we're going to be having tomorrow around what needs to be done to confront those hazards, those upcoming hazards, understanding them better, and preparing for them. But I think this is a nice opener for the discussion that we're having later today as well, after the break, in which we will be listening a little bit more from European politicians on what their actions are doing. So we get back to Eva for you to decide how long we get to have a coffee break and come back here.
Thank you very much. It's just a virtual coffee break, so it should be faster than an in-person coffee break. But we'll have a break, and then I would ask you to come back really before 16:40 to really start on time. So maybe take 10 minutes maximum, because giving you 5, you're not going to respect that. So let's go for 10. Okay, let's be realistic. And then in 10 minutes time, we will have another block of another session, which is also as interesting as the first one. So we have someone from DG Klima who's already online, and she will be presenting us the latest news from DG Klima. What are the challenges? Also some others on the Green Deal, on the risk assessment that was just public released yesterday. And then we'll also have 3 interventions from the local level, from councillors and mayors, to react to that and also present what are the challenges from the local perspective from different points of view, from heat island affair, from climate neutrality, reforestation, etc. Okay, so 10 minutes, okay, and then we'll be back sharp. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so we start. Good. So I hope that our participants were thoughtful and come back on time. We anyhow will now start in this second sequence of our Climate Academy, which we roll together between PLATFORMA and UCLG. So I think just for introduction, this first segment was very important. We had a keynote, so this is a completely, it was another methodology, we could say. We had a scientist informing us what will happen in giving the big picture. But now, and in the day of tomorrow, you will get a lot of own ideas and possibilities. Who is doing what can be done, how is it done, and we will have now a panel and contributions from those people, as you were calling for, that give good example, that have positive, that try the best to make Europe the first climate neutral continent on European level. But we also will, of course, hear from local councillors and mayors how this is then done in cities, because of course Europe is a continent that is from the regions, the world regions, that relies on the strength of its subnational government, and in particular cities that are really doing an enormous job to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And that not only the politicians, but also their citizens are fully engaged in this objective. So we will look at first a presentation of Mrs. Laura Manavelia. I hope I pronounce your name right. I think it is a Flemish name. She is from the DG on climate action, and I think Laura, if I don't mistake, you also have experience in local government. So we are very happy to have you here today with us to open the dialogue, to show what you are working, what does it mean to make Europe the first climate neutral continent from the European Commission. I will warn you in 10 minutes time, because of course here we are trying to create debate, and this will have the methodology of more short intervention than we heard in the first segments. Laura, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm sorry I couldn't attend the first part to listen to the keynote speech, but I hope that we will have an interesting discussion for the second part. So my name is Laura Manavelia. I'm from the European Commission's Directorate General for Climate Action. I work in the team that deals with communication, stakeholders, and civil society and citizens. And part of our work is indeed the work with local and regional authorities and local climate action, and also how we can involve citizens in these issues. So I will give you a short update on where we are in terms of EU policies, what's coming next, and then we'll be very happy to discuss that also with the representatives of the local level who know the concrete work best. So you can go to the next slide. So as you know, on climate change, we have both bad news and good news. Unfortunately, the bad news are quite bad, and there is a lot of them. This is an image from the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report from last year, and it shows that indeed the global warming is there. It's progressing rapidly. That's the bad news. But the good news is that if you look at the graph here, you can see that there is still scope for us to influence the color of the red and the right-hand side of the image. If we take urgent action now, if we take strong and ambitious action now, we can still shave off some part of the global warming that is expected for the next decades, and we can also learn to better manage the impacts that we will be facing. Next slide, please. At the European level, the framework for our climate action is, of course, the European Green Deal. So this is the very broad-ranging strategy and package of policies that the European Commission has been working on over the past few years. I think that in your background materials, you had quite a lot of information and links on both the Green Deal and specifically the climate policies. But what we are working on is basically our guiding target for the long term, which is for the year 2050 and the climate neutrality target for the EU. This means that by 2050, the European Union should be climate neutral. We should cut our greenhouse gas emissions as much as we can, and we should make sure that we deal with the emissions that we can't cut, and that our carbon sinks, the natural carbon sinks, so the technologies that are developed to capture carbon, help us deal with the remaining emissions. We have already made some good progress in the past years and the past couple of decades. This is not a new effort. The EU has already reduced its emissions by around 30% since 1990, which is our base year for a lot of this target setting. And we see that we have made good progress, that it is possible to reduce our emissions while growing our economy, but that to get to the next targets for 2030 and to climate neutrality by 2050, we need to accelerate these efforts. We need to do more, and we need to make sure that that we do this across all sectors of society and in a coordinated way. If you look at some of the parts of the graph here, you can see that in some sectors there's more progress that has been achieved than in others. For example, the power sector, of course, is increasingly decarbonized, whereas in other sectors, for example, in transport, the emissions reductions are slower. And in some sectors, they will always be challenging. There are always challenging parts. For example, in agriculture, it is not easy to cut all the emissions that that are generated by the activities. So this is why we need to really push forward for action in all sectors, and we need to pay more and more attention to taking care of our carbon sink. You can go to the next slide. So what we have been busy with over the past couple of years is what we call the Fit for 55 package. This basically means updating EU climate and energy legislation to make sure that we are equipped to reach our 2030 emissions reduction targets. This has been a huge effort of looking at all the different pieces of the puzzle. So I won't go into the detail on all of these, but basically these are the key components of EU legislation that is in place to reduce emissions and also to make the transition in our energy system. So there are rules for things like the EU emissions trading system, which concerns emissions from industry and the power sector mainly. That covers around 40% of EU greenhouse gas emissions. And then there are rules for the other sectors, for example, for transport, buildings and agriculture, where we have targets set at the EU level, but where it's for the member states to define the policies that are needed to reach those targets. So across the board on these different pieces of EU regulations and directives, there has been an update, a comprehensive update of these rules to make sure that altogether they will help us get to the 2030 target for emissions reductions. You can move to the next slide. So basically what this means is that now we have the framework, the legislative framework for 2030 that is set. We know where we are heading. We have the tools and the laws in place to get there. What we need to do next is look at the next milestone, because of course, for example, for industry, the investment horizon is not a couple of years, it's rather 10 years or 20 years. So we know the long-term target 2050, we know the short-term actions for 2030. What we are doing now at the Commission level, at the European level, is we are starting to look at the next steps. What do we need to make sure that we stay on the right path? So this is one of the latest policy initiatives on climate from the Commission. Just last month, we published our analysis on what are the next steps on this path and what should be the milestone for 2040 in terms of our emissions reductions. So this is not yet a legislative proposal, for example. This will come in during the next mandate of the Commission. But this is really an invitation for all stakeholders to take part in this debate, to look at where we are now, what needs to be done, what we will be able to do by 2030, and how do we make sure that we can build on that then going forward to the long-term target. You can go to the next slide, thanks. Of course, what we already know is that regardless of how much we reduce our emissions, climate change is already here. The impacts of climate change are already here, and we know that they will not get easier. So the picture is quite bleak. This is a quotation from the first ever European climate risk assessment by the European Environment Agency that was published just yesterday. So this is very, very fresh, which is a first sort of comprehensive look at what are the climate risks that we face in Europe, for the risks for our society and economy, and where we also look at those risks that are driven by climate change in combination with the other risks. So what does that mean in terms of the economy, in terms of finance? What does that mean for health, and so on? So this is the analytical part from the European Environment Agency. This is very fresh from yesterday, and I have even something even fresher for you today, because just I believe a few minutes ago the Commission published its first response to this risk assessment, which is the Commission communication on managing climate risks in Europe. So this is where we sketch out the areas where we need to work more and where we need to work increasingly together with the different sectors, and also with the different levels of governments and with the different levels of action, including the local level, to make sure that those risks are well understood and that they are tackled where it makes most sense to tackle them and where we can get the best impact. In many cases, this will actually be the local level, because a lot of the impacts are first felt at the very local level, whether it's about heat waves, whether it's about floods, whether it's about drought, as we have unfortunately seen recently in many places in Europe. What's also true is that a lot of the solutions can be local, and a lot of the solutions are put in place locally. So, so this is really an area that I think will be increasingly important in the climate policy sphere at all levels, from the European to the very local. You can move to the next slide. Here there are some examples of the solutions. So it can be nature-based solutions, it can be buildings, it can be solutions related to observation and monitoring. I won't go more into detail because we can wrap up briefly on some of the EU initiatives that are there to help the local level work with this. You can go to the next slide. I am sure that some of you will be aware of these initiatives, or maybe even more or less closely involved. So we have different networks for cities and regional authorities. For example, the Covenant of Mayors, which is a long-standing initiative, the EU missions that are newer initiatives, but that have a great momentum behind them also in terms of coming up with new types of solutions. So very happy to discuss with you as well how you are involved and what more can be done there. And as my final slide, I wanted to just flag another initiative that is not for local or regional authorities as such. You can move to the last one, but which is about the part on engaging citizens. We know that a lot of these changes will mean big changes at the societal level, but also changes in people's daily lives. And this is another element that I would like to flag, and where local authorities have a really important role, because if a lot of these changes, it's up to the local authorities to really make sure that citizens are on board with the changes that are happening around them. For this, we have an initiative that's called the European Climate Pact. I won't go in detail on the activities, but this is an initiative where really we want to link up with the bottom-up action by citizens and civil society and make the link between their work and between the European work. So very happy to exchange also on these types of initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, for this very comprehensive presentation. And it's clear you are the Deputy Head of Communications, Civil Society Relations, so you are, of course, not surprisingly, a very good speaker. And because you have a very, of course, a portfolio of the European Commission is huge, so are the finances, and tomorrow we will see a little bit in detail. But I think we are now in this bridge between the keynote in the morning, where we see the scenario is difficult, but of course we need to work, we go forward. And you have already opened up a little bit of the other possibility to work locally. And of course, local level is the key level to go forward also for you. So I have here three politicians, and maybe Flo Klukas, she is a councillor in Cheltenham in UK. You could say something on the point on buildings, because it is not only nature-based solution on greenfield and parks, it is the whole piece of how cities are, how energy policies are working, how are buildings working. So I think in your Merseyside there was a very interesting project, and of course we would like you, Flo, also to speak then to the points Laura raised. And the expectations maybe where we should go in the future, building on good relations between European Union and local level. Flo, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Can I thank you for the invitation to be here? And it's quite interesting having listened to all of those presenting thus far, because a number of things have come out of those presentations to me. The first is from Amelia: communities enhance action. The European agenda needs to be amended, I think Sergio said. Fabrizio, it's about politics, vulnerable communities. And then from me, it's also about language and enabling people to be part of what we're doing. Because unfortunately, if you look at all the slides that have come out today, the only one I think would enliven local interest, in other words, ordinary folk wanting to take part, is the last slide. Language is so important in everything we do. We need to make sure that it not only is understandable, but that it brings people in rather than pushes them away. I'd like to take you on a very quick journey, if I may, and if I carry on too long, please feel free to tell me to shut up. In 2007, we were presented with the next phase of EU funding. And for a number of us, we were quite concerned because the funding that we would have hoped we'd be able to use to help with our housing issues and our climate change issues, even down in 2007, we were told, no, that's only going to new EU states. It's not going to the old group of EU members. So we had a fight. And I'm pleased to say our Italian colleagues in the European Parliament backed we, who in the Committee of the Regions wanted this change. They took it to the Parliament, and both the Committee of the Regions and the Parliament backed what we wanted to do. That then went to the Council and it went to ministers, and we managed to get that change. What that did, what that enabled, ladies and gentlemen, was a significant way, not just to begin a process in relation to housing, but actually to ensure that we were able to start new social enterprises, new training for local people who'd had no training, who had no opportunity for real employment. And we were able to put those together with our housing needs and create something called REACH. And what that did across the whole of Merseyside was to enable our social housing to be retrofitted. So instead of having a damp home, people were able to have a dry one. Instead of paying out enormous sums for energy, which many could never afford, we actually fitted solar panels and other assistance. And so those young people, those older people living in poor quality housing, not only saw the difference it was making to their homes, it actually ensured that they too were getting benefit because they were employed and trained for jobs. And over the last 2 decades or thereabouts, some 10,000 homes have been retrofitted. And now, looking to the future, what is going to happen in that Merseyside region is that those people in social housing, those people who earn below £31,000 a year, but who own their home, will be able to have retrofitting done. And that's an enormous change in the way those people will live. It's cheaper. It means that they will live in a warm home, a dry home, a home where, if they have solar panels, they can actually contribute solar energy to the national grid and get some cash back for it. So that, over the last 10 or so years, 20 years, has actually made a huge difference in those communities. And I'm pleased that that is going to carry on over the next few years. But of course, that isn't the only area. Because I was Deputy Mayor of Liverpool, I was responsible for all EU funding. And I have to say to you, if you're in the European Union, do not leave, do not do a Brexit. It is a huge mistake, okay? Huge, and people will be feeling that for years to come. But what we are able to do now is to look at those lessons and see how we apply them elsewhere. I am now a councillor, I'm a cabinet member, effectively a deputy mayor in Cheltenham. And so we are looking at climate change. Cheltenham is not like Liverpool. Liverpool was a city which was one of the poorest in the European Union, which received approximately €3,000 million over a period of 30 years to help rebuild it, revitalize it, re-educate it. Cheltenham won't have that. Cheltenham has to do its own thing. And so what we have here is a city that's a regency city, a regency town, where most people are okay. But we have some areas which are extremely poor, and where the quality of housing needs to improve, not just social housing owned by the local council and housing associations, but private housing too. And so we will need also to build over the next decade some 10,000 new homes. And this is what we're doing. Those 10,000 new homes will all be carbon neutral. Every single one, 0 carbon. Heating will come through heat pumps. There will be triple glazing. Homes will face where the sun comes from. There will be the opportunity for people to learn how to build, and so there will be employment there as well. Unfortunately, well, fortunately, I guess for Cheltenham, we also have a lot of...
May I remind of time? Sorry.
Okay, do you want me to stop now?
No, conclude, please.
Okay, we also have a lot of older properties, which are extremely difficult, as many of you will know, to change, to retrofit. But those will also be done. And where they are owned by the people who live there, we will look at helping them to get the cash to re-equip those homes, to refit them. And all of that will make an enormous difference to our climate footprint. We are aiming to be neutral by 2030. That is what our town is going to do. And over the next few years, that will be not just the aim, but that will be how we enable our citizens to do it. How can we afford this? We're not in the European Union. We don't get ERDF, we don't get any of that kind of money. And our government, well, let me not talk about our government and its funding for local authorities. What we have become is a commercial council. So we actually are in a position where we raise our money through the activities we do, and that enables us to make sure our poorer citizens, our most disadvantaged children, we're currently helping about 7,000 of them who live below the poverty line, and others live in warm, in comfortable homes. And that's a huge thing that we are able to do. All I would say to you is, when you look at your citizens and you see them and you understand the difficulties they have, don't simply say, we're going to do a report. Do the action and bring those citizens with you to make that action meaningful, to make it something that will change their lives, something that will give them a better future and an even better present. Can I thank you for your attention? I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Flo. And it was very clear, both. I think the message is immediate reacting to all our academy and the inputs. This is very helpful. And of course, what Laura was saying, and also the point, always it's about, as we say in German, you shoot 2 birds with the same, which today we wouldn't say, but the point is the one project is integrated. I think your proposal or your project and your was how you integrate climate change with the big challenge you have there for inclusion and accessibility and rights, and at the same time financing all the services. So this was a very important aspect. And of course, we will have over the next days several possibilities, and now we will hear some from my home city. I have actually not introduced myself. I'm Sarah Höflich. I'm the director of UCLG Learning, and but I'm born in Cologne, and I'm very, very happy that my mayor is here with us. And here in Cologne, we will probably hear a little bit more on living in this. You might all know Cologne is well-known large city, and climate policies, when they are done in democratic structure and all the intentions of the city, how does it work? Andreas, can you give us some insight? He is the vice mayor of Cologne, Andreas Wolter. And please, the floor is yours for the next 5 minutes.
Yes, hello to everybody. First of all, I want to reflect a little bit on the keynote speech from Laura Manavia. So for us, it's very important that for 55 and the Green Deal must go on in the next period from you, because the Green Deal has undeniably led the major policy shift that encourages a green transition to addresses climate change and transform how the economy functions and indeed how society navigates the new reality of our time. So 75% of our of EU population live in cities, and we produce 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions. But we can spend the euro only once. And we saw the protests of the farmers in the last weeks. So, and the question is, what's going on at the EU elections? We need investments for the adaptation of climate change and also for the transformation. So let me talk a little bit about Cologne. Cologne is governed by citizens since more than 600 years. No kings, no dukes, no castle in our town since 600 years. But Cologne is also a city, is in the area of lignite coal, chemical industry. The headquarters of the lignite coal company was in Cologne, and we started this process of change 40 years ago when we replaced all the lignite coal plants in our city to gas. And what happened then, a few years later, then I think the process started in Cologne with the flood disasters we had with the Rhine. So 10,000 of citizens were affected by these floods. And so we started to invest more than 500 million euros in technical solutions to protect from the floods. But also we invest in information for prevention or action plans for evacuation. So we knew all our critical infrastructure and the level of water in every street when the flood is coming. For Cologne, it means the Rhine, it rises slowly and also descends slowly. But what we saw then a few years ago, 2021, with flood disasters, that the small rivers, they rise much more quicker. And we saw then that the physical damage or to public infrastructure at least cost 30 billion euros. So we learned climate change is very, very expensive. And we lost a lot of people, and because we made errors in the warning systems. So there was a question about responsibility in the administration. So we have a big lack of information, and it costs a lot of life. And we also have what we thought later was a global responsibility. So I'm very happy that we have now the Loss and Damage Fund on the UN level with the last COP. And we think about the global south, what we see, 30 billion euros in 2021 for the floods in Germany, and the Loss and Damage Fund has 100 billion euros. So that's not a lot of money for the entire world. Germany was able to manage this problem with the disaster, to rebuild infrastructure, to make financial support to the citizens, to the companies. But our government says we can do that only once, not very often. And so that's I think it's a big problem. And so that's the reason we have to act. And at least what we had in 2021 also was a citizens petition to get climate neutral in Cologne for electricity and heat in 2030. And they collected so many signatures so fast in only a couple of weeks that if this petition was not adopted by the city council word by word, then there was a citizens' decision. So about this, a referendum. And both sides thought perhaps we will lose this referendum. And so they just started to negotiate about this topic. The result was we get climate neutral in 2035, so 5 years later. And we made a lot of decisions also then in the city council. And without this petition, the city council, there wouldn't be the majorities for all those things. By example, we have to every year 11,000 rooftops with photovoltaic. So we made for wind power, we have concentration zones where we want to build windmills. So we now change a lignite coal power plant into climate neutral power plant. By example, with big heat pumps where we took out the heat from the River Rhine and change it to energy and for heating systems or sewage sludge combustions. But for this, we need money. So it's very, very important that we get the funds from European Union, as well from the German government. So we cannot do it alone. So the city of Cologne have programs to put on up to 10% on the funds we get, all the people get from the federal government or for European Union, and we put up to 10% additional for the investment, also to empower a little bit the development. So Cologne wants to get climate neutral in 2035, and we have now the framework. We know every step, so we have an exact roadmap how to get there. The action plan we also adopted in the city council is the result of the comprehensive multi-actor process of the city of Cologne, in which all city departments and municipal holdings, we have a big city-owned electricity company, and with a high influence of the citizens' overall greenhouse gas reduction potential, have participated. And last but not least, now it's also the citizens, now they have to act too, because we need the investments of the private sector. That's very, very clear, very important. For this, we need the funds. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I think you raised very important points with both challenges. The challenge, of course, of flooding, one of the main impacts of climate change, but also how to go ahead with such an ambitious plan to make climate neutrality. And so not only raising the expectation and the commitments of the European delegation and the national government, but also to the citizens. No? So I think the referendum is, of course, extremely meaningful, because the point that they have decided, so you do because you decided. Hopefully, the voters will feel responsible for their vote and continue. But it is, of course, I think, a very important way to look forward. No, not only involving and consulting community, but make them deciding. This is, of course, a very important example. So before we go back, and I'm very happy that several of you are making questions here in the chat. And please also do questions to our speakers, so all 4 of them, and then we can later come back to Laura and to all of you. But first, we will look at our third example and reaction of Adina. Adina is Adina Nicolescu. So
Hello.
she is local councillor of the District 6 of Bucharest, Romania. And full of experiences and of lessons from her city. And now, Adina, we are very, the floor is for you. in the next 5 minutes to see how this is perceived, the European climate policies, but also what you are doing, your local policies in Bucharest. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you.
We hear you. Fine, you can go.
So today I will talk about some of the most important projects for the protection of the environment and combating climate change we are doing in our district. I think that I should mention now is residential building thermal rehabilitation from 2009 until the end of the last year. We rehabilitated 486 residential buildings, and this year we will rehabilitate the most residential building in 1 year, more than ever, because we invested the most of the money for this kind of investment, and most of the money from these projects come from our local budget, but also from the European non-refundable funds, and also from external credits. The second project I want to talk to you about, it's NZEB energy efficiency. It's nearly zero energy buildings. This program we implemented in schools. It's for public buildings, involves the comprehensive energy retrofitting of 12 schools and kindergardens, and the construction of 8 new buildings designed for kindergartens and after-school programs. The third project I want to talk about is waste pre-collection points for fractions. So practically it will be underground containers, bins. Is a large-scale project. First of all, in terms of expansions, there are no less than 886 waste pre-collection points, of which 743 underground for 4 fractions of collection, and the funds are from our own budget and from non-refundable European funds. I think this project regarding recycle is one of the most important in our city, and could be an example for other administrations, maybe in the city or in the whole country. We have planned to put the first underground platforms into operation in the second half of this year. So maybe I should stop the presentation of these 3 projects here now, and I want to talk a little about the most important problem we faced. For example, legislative problems. Not all Romanian laws are adapted to what we want to implement from the European level, and we face many delays because we do not receive the approvals or we do not receive the approvals on time from the national institutions. The delays or even the blockage of the project at the approval authority. For example, the problem in the implementation of the project with the container garbage underground bins. The Romanian law specifies that the garbage bin must be 10 meters away from the residential buildings, and we do not have the space to take into account this distance when we want to set up, and for this reason we have a hard time getting the approval. But we also have problems related to people, which we also cannot control. For example, the reticence of people to give their consent for rehabilitation, or problems with builders. There are not enough trained builders to work on specific standards, for example, for NZEB, for retrofitting. This is an example. But to summarize, we could have problems with the duration of the implementation, and sometimes we can exceed some deadlines for the realization of directives of the European Commission, but we managed to do, I think, all of them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Adina. And I think, of course, we could see now with these three practices, they are all connected to the European policies and in different ways. No, like Adina, you now said you try to implement and you face a lot of challenges that probably in the office in Brussels nobody can imagine, but they are there. So that is why, of course, simplified, as Flo said, the language is a crucial thing in multi-governance approach, because we have only you are the one who is interlocutor and who is connecting this to a real process and to real buildings and to real infrastructure and so on. So thank you very much. I think the three reactions gave a lot of diverse responses, much more than the nature-based solutions that were initially said as an option. And of course, now I have to be fair with our questions in the chat room. There was a first question, maybe this one is to Laura, about the top-down and bottom-up, which is this is from Malaysia, but of course here in the EU policies, everybody thinks, okay, are you inventing something only there from Brussels in your office and later we have to deal with it? So how do you make sure that the bottom-up approach is best taken into account? And then I will immediately address that second question, and maybe we can you can also say something to that one from Theodoros from Greece, about the interacting factors that make it difficult to measure policies. And I think here's like a little bit, if we invert what Flo just was saying, she has shown the complexity when a project already stands and has included so many things. But how do you measure? So probably there she would also have ideas. And then other parts are going to, the third one is from Maidanka, I think is from Africa, about sanitation. That is another policy. And
no, hello, I'm sorry. Hello.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm from Pakistan.
From Pakistan. Oh, so sorry, Maidan. But forgive me,
okay.
I did not know. But
no, it's okay.
So I think the point you raise is also very interesting. Sanitation is a big issue, and it is an important policy where climate change can also be addressed. So if anybody has ideas on entrepreneurship about this is what happens now. That's why I said we have several members in the south doing a lot of innovation with the service provision here on fecal sludge. And yeah, I think these were the three questions. And if you have more questions, don't hesitate to raise them in the chat so our speakers can say. So Laura, would you like to speak first?
Yep. I'm happy to start on this question on the interplay between the global challenges and the local level and the top-down and the bottom-up. I think this is an excellent question, but it is also a little bit of a chicken and egg question. Which one comes first and which one is more important? I think the answer probably is that we need both. I mean, our experience from the EU policy context is that actually a lot of the momentum for the Green Deal was created also by citizens taking an active role. A few years ago, with a lot of the climate demonstrations, the youth movement, a lot of citizens also in the last EU elections going to the polls and showing their concern and showing their support to these issues. And that has really pushed us as policymakers to work on this in a very determined way, and then on the other hand having the policies in place and setting the clear direction of travel from the policy will help all the levels of action to take the concrete measures that are needed, and to also empower the local level to take the action at their level. So I think it's really both ways. The political or the policy or the regulatory framework will not be there if there's not support and a certain push also from the bottom up. And on the other hand, the top-down solutions are needed to really scale up the solutions and the approaches. So I think we need to work on it at all levels and in both ways. Also, the question on the complexity, I think, which is the second question on the complexity of climate change. I think this is exactly what's at the core of the climate risk assessment and the climate risk management communication that were just published this week, because this is precisely the challenge. It's a very complex issue, and in many cases, for example, the causes of a climate-related problem, the impact might be felt in another sector or in another part of society. So this is really why we have to develop the solutions that really strengthen the cooperation and the collaboration, because the interlinkages are complex.
Thank you very much, Laura. And maybe also of Andreas, maybe on that complexity issue, you have shown many different push factors, to say, that lead to your policies, and it seems you have tried to adapt. So how do you measure success in that case? Because you probably do not know all the indicators before you go to a consultation process like yours.
Yes, of course, but our program to get climate neutral, so we count every kilo of greenhouse gas emissions, and we know how we can reach the goal and what's necessary to reach it. But there are several actors, and the question is, does every actor make his job and what he has to do? That depends on you, that depends on national government, that depends on the citizens, that depends on the city of Cologne. And what we saw in the last month, that we have the billions of euros from what we had, by example, for COVID, and we didn't spend in this time. We want to put it for the energy transition in Germany, but the Constitutional Court said that you aren't allowed to do this, to take those funds for this. So, and now we are missing the money, and that is one of the obstacles we have. So that was also a reason I argued on this. On this point, we need money, we need funds, but we need also the local level to have standing processes with both the European and the national level for sharing our knowledge and demonstrating what's the best suited to serve the whole. And we need conditions, targeted funding, appropriate programs, and they are set up with us at the table with the European Union. I think that's also very important. We are always only part of hearings and not part of the negotiations. I think that's a very, very, very important point. And last but not least, we need to cut administrative red tape and long application process for funding. That's also very, very important. I know I'm living in a country with Federal Republic, so the money comes top down, so the decisions are bottom up, but it's financed top down. And we know how long it takes until the money reaches the local level. And by example, for Germany, it's also very important that also cities can apply directly at the European Union for the big funds, and that doesn't run via national government to the states and then to the city level.
Yeah, thank you very much. And maybe Adina, in your case, you showed a lot of projects you implement. I don't know if you how was that process. Andreas was saying, ideally we sit on the table with the European Commission and we say what we should do. We also bring up our own proposals. Do you experience in Bucharest a conflict that you say, okay, bottom up, if I'm if can I be stronger if I build on my local assets which are already in place, or do sometimes projects force me to do it differently to meet the expectations of, in that case, a donor, or it does not fit with my structures? Maybe you have given us some examples of your internal conflicting, because the system seems not so prepared for all these windows Laura has shown. Could you give an input here? And please, yeah.
Sorry, I'm thinking because yes, I think I gave an example. But no other problems we do not have with the implementation. We are a district that we use very much European funds. We access the opening calls for European projects, and we use them at maximum that we can. Of course, we face problems, but we manage to be on track. Besides of this kind of problems, we do not have others.
Yeah, thank you. That is also a valuable answer of cooperation. So maybe we also have a third question here on that entrepreneurship around sanitation. And Flo, you said your council is a commercial council. So I think that point of generally of entrepreneurship. So you gave an example of inclusion now, and inclusion in climate change and your housing policy. But I'm sure you also have something to say about entrepreneurship, because this is the other big demand of the citizens, that they want stable jobs and they want to be included and involved as not only as beneficiary, as actors. So is this in your city sounding topic?
Yes, this is what I wanted to ask.
Yes, and I'll explain to you why and how. We have across, I'll talk about Cheltenham rather than Liverpool, though I could do both. Liverpool is much bigger, obviously. But in Cheltenham, what we have is a partnership between the Chamber of Commerce and the Council. And we also have a number of other organisations actively involved. And we have all our schools involved too. And one of the things that we are looking at with that partnership is how we create a passageway for young people to go not just into training and apprenticeships, but also to start businesses, because starting businesses is an extremely difficult thing to do. In Liverpool, for example, we started something called the Women's Organisation. And that organisation, since it was founded some years ago, has actually helped thousands of women start businesses. And it does it, you can have a look at it online if you wish, and it will show you what was done, why and how. And all of those people who go, they don't have to have a university degree. They don't have to have any qualifications. But if they have an idea and they want to talk it through with somebody, they just go, knock on the door, talk to somebody in there, and that person, if the idea is worth it, will help them get finance to start the business they want, provide them with an office and secretarial assistance. And all of that to those people who go with the idea is free. Okay, the organization does it for itself. The European Union is aware of the women's organization because they do a great deal across not just the UK now, but across Europe. But in terms of starting businesses, particularly in terms of sanitation, that is very difficult when sanitation is a mechanism which is controlled by governments. Which is controlled by government, because if it's controlled by government, then it's very difficult to break into. And government needs to understand that if an organization, if a district, if an area needs better sanitation, they need basically to get off their backsides and listen. And all I'd say to you about that is, the better the challenge, the better the governments. So if governments are not listening, then, excuse me saying it, but go and smack them on the mouth and get them to listen, okay? Because that's the way that things will change.
No, thank you very much, Flo. And I hope, if you want to say one sentence, because now we are at the end of our day one on climate change, how you perceive this academy, and then I would give the floor to Boris. Do you want to make a statement, Flo? Very short.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. What I'd say is, we are in this together. All of us, wherever we are, whether we're in Asia, Africa, the Americas, or Europe, we are in it together. And if we don't work together, don't listen to one another, don't learn from one another, as I have today, then we're going to fail. So I want to say thank you to UCLG and to PLATFORMA and CEMR for bringing us together, because we have such a lot which we can do together to change things. And to our colleagues in Cologne and other parts of the European Union, good grief, if somebody suffering from Brexit can help in any way, then please tell me and I'll be there.
Thank you very much.
We want to be with you, not against you.
Very, very nice. Thank you, Laura. Flo, and I was looking at Laura, if you want to make a statement as well.
Nothing particular. I would just like to thank you all for participating in these exchanges, and please don't hesitate to be in touch if you have any questions or any ideas to share with us.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you very much. And my colleague Boris, the director of PLATFORMA, will wrap up. So we will see each other tomorrow, learn more, do more, and be more, as Flo just said. Thank you so much. Boris.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much. And especially, I have the pleasure to wrap up a little bit the discussions of the first day. Obviously, we started with an excellent contribution, a keynote speech from the academic side, which actually explained to us not only what is the process, what are the sources of global warming, but what are the consequences and how we need to be ready, because we are not. And that is really a very strong take-home message that we received. Obviously, your input during the multi-meter session clearly showed that you are aware of the role that city councils, but also national governments can and should play in the process to get us on the right path. We are looking in the right direction, but we are not yet going fast enough in the right direction. So I think this is maybe the take-home message that we have. Many thanks to our speakers, Laura Manavilia from the European Commission, providing insight into the policy framework. That is very important for us, because we believe that joint action, which is framed jointly, is very important. Otherwise, we can all go in different directions. So, especially the European Climate Risk Assessment report shows very clearly where the risks are and where we are heading unless we take urgent action. Thank you very much, Flo, obviously, as always, for your excellent contribution. I took very much the message, bring people in. That was one of your greatest messages, and really kudos and congratulations if you can clearly say 10,000 homes is 10,000 homes. It's 10,000 families who can live in decency. So this is a hand-on change that can be done. Andreas, Obviously, the city of Cologne at the forefront, as always, very much appreciating your contributions all the time, but especially focusing on the finance. We know that without finance that is helping cities and regions, there will be lots of interest, a lot of ambition, but the progress will not be as such as we would have needed it in the future. So addressing causes, mitigating risks is a very important key, where finance is a very important enabler in this action. And last but not least, from Adina Nicolescu from Bucharest, showing concrete examples, what can be done, what should be done. At the city level, I especially would like to highlight the attack on the municipal waste management. If you look at CH4 purely, if you look at methane, after agriculture, municipal waste management is the second largest contributor of methane emissions. So this is really an important part where cities can and should do and make a change. And last but not least, the message that was shared by many of you is sharing knowledge and learning from each other is a very important point. So this is also, for me, a jump board to invite you to the second day of the discussions, where sharing knowledge will be very much presented. We will show very nice examples of decentralized cooperation. We are focusing on examples between Europe and Latin America as a follow-up of our increased engagement with Latin American municipalities. I see FLACMA, our partner, present here as well. So tomorrow, interesting examples about decentralized cooperation as a tool to achieve sharing knowledge and making change at the local level. We'll visit Costa Rica, we will visit Ecuador, we will visit Argentina, obviously virtually through our screens, but we will learn interesting examples how cities can actually concretely make a change together in partnership, exchanging knowledge, learning from each other, and contributing to a safer future for all of us and for this planet. So thank you very much for your engagement today, and very much looking forward to see you tomorrow.